Hey, you're wide receiver Khalil Shakir, right?
I sure am, kid. Here, go long.
Whoa! You're pretty good at football, man.
And you guys are pretty good at pizza.
Oh, sick. Dude.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to this Trainwreck Sports Podcast, where we are here to pay the bills, presented, as always, by Picasso's Pizza tonight and every night. Go get your Picasso's Pizza anywhere, shipped it anywhere nationwide. Get it in for the weekend. Well, not really the weekend. We're waiting all the way till Monday night, but we'll get into that later on. First, let me bring in my guest. We've made a reunion of sorts to the sports talk radio world. We've got Mike Bunt and Mike Partham. Mike and Mike joining Jake here. Mike Partham making his 2024 season debut. Mike Bunt back again. Guys, I'll start with you, Partham. Welcome back to the show. How are we feeling on this Tuesday night?
It's nice to be back. I took basically an off-season sabbatical. I was waiting for real football to kick in so we'd have something, more concrete to sink our teeth into. And then schedules got shifted a little bit where I couldn't be here last week. But it's nice to be able to be back with you gentlemen talking Buffalo Bills. And it's nice to talk Buffalo Bills when they seem to be on cruise control, just taking teams down left and right.
Yeah, it's always good talking Bills football, especially after a win over the Miami Dolphins. I was nervous last week. As you know, Jake, I picked Miami. I look like a fool. I have egg on my face right now, but I'm more than happy to accept that because 2-0 feels a lot better than 1-1. And I'm excited to talk about not only what happened on Thursday night, but what needs to happen on Monday night for the Bills to get to 3-0.
Yes, sir. Noticeably, Carson's absent this week after picking the Bills to lose. We won't hold that against him just yet, but I'm just saying he had something going on tonight all of a sudden, but that's all right.
Wait.
Guys,
so you're telling me both Carson and Bunt picked the Bills to lose?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
All right. I mean, given that the Bills have been running roughshod over the Dolphins for the last however many years, it's turning into the Bills-Patriots in the mirror universe nowadays. And the Dolphins fans were typically, acting like they won the Super Bowl before the first game of the season even started. It's the hard lesson that, like, Nicky Smokes and all the crazed Dolphins fans have to learn every year, seemingly.
Yeah, man. It's crazy. It was not the outcome I was expecting at all. Let's get into the Bills-Dolphins game because, first of all, hopefully Tua's feeling better. We saw that he's going to get placed on IR today. That's the story of the game coming out of it nationally and everything. But the Tua injury wasn't the cause of this game. The Dolphins letting this game slip away. The game was well out of hand going into that. The Bills really just dominated from all fronts on this game Thursday night. It was really impressive. It was even more impressive watching the rest of the league on Sunday and seeing how that all kind of turned out and seeing the Bills able to turn in a performance like that offensively and defensively made me feel really good. But the biggest thing, I think, and we touched on it last week, Mike, we said that interior pressure and the D linemen were going to be key to victory last week, getting into Tua's face, not from the edges as much, but getting into his face, pushing the pocket, hurting him on his drop, messing with his rhythm however they can. The two guys that played almost damn near every snap on defense and had Joe Buscaglia and the Athletic gave them both A grades on the defensive line, Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones. They made their presence felt. Ed Oliver, obviously, the big sack in the game. But the trenches for 2 weeks in a row on this defensive side of the ball specifically, taking over both games, whether it be Rousseau taking over in the second half and making the splash plays, or Oliver and Jones really disrupting everything the Dolphins wanted to do and messing up their timing. 2 games in a row, they've taken over a game defensively. And we can talk a lot about the offense and theorize on how they're going to attack each week because it feels like it's going to be different. But I feel like the thing I can count on the most is the defense is going to be stellar, and it's because of that defensive line.
Yeah, the defense looked great on Thursday night, especially the defensive line. You mentioned Ed Oliver. He had a sack on 4th down. That was huge in the game. And then the offense capitalizing on it the very next play to really put this one, what felt like, away late in the second quarter. Obviously, there's still a bunch of time remaining after that Von Miller looks like he is returned to form. It's still early. We'll see if he can keep it for an entire 17-game season, but he's ranking out as one of the top 10 to 15 defensive ends in football at the current moment. So that is a welcome addition. I know some of us thought that he would have a little bit of a rejuvenation, but to this level, probably not the expectations that many would have had. Even AJ Epineza was in on the pressure when Tua was forced to throw it away, which led to the Jamarcus Ingram interception. So the D-line definitely has shown up from a pass rush perspective. The Bills have still been a little bit weak against the run, but that's to be expected when you're a primarily nickel defense. But not just the defensive line doing the job. I think you got to look at the secondary right now, and you got to give major props to guys like obviously Christian Benford first and foremost, but then you have to talk about Rasul Douglas, Jamarcus Ingram, Cam Lewis. This is a defense that is playing with several low-pick guys, several guys that are really not names in this league, and they just shut down one of the top passing attacks in the entire NFL a week after holding Marvin Harrison Jr. to one catch for 4 yards. And look at what Marvin Harrison did last week against the Rams. So I think what we're looking at is, while they are more vulnerable as a defense than what they have been in the past, they still can ball under Sean McDermott and Bobby Babich. And right now they are the 8th ranked defensive DVOA in the entire NFL. So if they can be like that consistently throughout the rest of the season, you're looking at one of the elite teams in the NFL.
I'm just glad Ed Oliver showed out for one game, because it seemed like Pat Moran was ready to bury him 6 feet under with how he's been underperforming, especially in the postseason. So it's nice to see him for him. Christian Benford was just a ball hawk in this game. I think there might have been one overthrow that Tua had where if Christian Benford had a couple more steps, he might have had a third on the day. I think, Mike, you saw that Joe Biscaglia clip where he's praising Christian Benford for being able to just flow to the ball, being able to read the quarterback's eyes, and he's going to be an asset along with Rasul. And I haven't really heard Kyer Elam's name called a lot. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe he's not on the field as much. He's not a starter per se yet, but we were hearing from training camp how much he's been improving. What are you guys seeing from him in this defense?
He's just not really seeing the field that much outside of special teams. And it's a good problem to have. It sucks that you have a first-round pick from 3 years ago that can't see the field, but it's also telling you how good the guys in front of him have been. Because if we're being real, during Trey White's tenure in Buffalo, he never really had an amazing number 2 corner to match up with him. He was playing with guys like Levi Wallace, then obviously Dane Jackson in recent years, and E.J. Gaines before that. Right now, you put Rasul Douglas, Christian Benford right next to each other. This might be the most complete corner room the Bills have had under Sean McDermott, from a 1-2, then you add Taron Johnson at the 3. I know the safety room behind them isn't great, but the corner depth on this team is really strong right now. The fact that Kyer Elam is your number 3 corner, if you're not counting Taron Johnson at the nickel, and then putting guys like Cam Lewis and Jamarcus Ingram and seeing them play at a high level, it's been an incredible start to the season for that entire secondary at this point in time. Kyler Murray struggled to complete anything beyond the line of scrimmage when he was going up against the Bills defense. And now you see Tua struggle going down the field. They're just not going to allow explosive plays. And if you keep teams in front of you in the pass game, good luck. I mean, it's really tough. That's the entire NFL right now.
Let's touch on that for a second, because I see all these pass chart maps from Next Gen Stats. I see, everybody's favorite Deshaun Watson for reasons other than what his play on the field. But you look at his play on the field recently, and you see his pass map. It looks like everything's within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, and we're like, okay, I guess he's burnt out. But then you look at Patrick Mahomes' most recent chart, and he's keeping everything within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. He's not going past 10 yards that much at all. So, I mean, they've been playing – the whole league has been playing too high cover shell, at least when they play the more explosive quarterbacks in the recent years. Are they now starting to catch up?
Defenses are ahead of the offenses right now. And we talked about this a little bit on the show last week, so I don't want to go too deep into it, but I'll give you a condensed version of basically what is happening. 2019 or 2018, one of those years, you only saw the too high safety look, I think, under 40% of the time. It was around 39%. Week 1 this year, it was over 60% of the time. So when basically 2018, 2019, 2021 was the most explosive passing offenses that we've ever seen in NFL history. Teams were just throwing over the top, explosive play after explosive play. Nobody could stop guys like Mahomes, Allen, Rodgers, and so forth. What happened? Teams started going to the too high safety look, basically saying, you know what, we'll bend, but we're not going to break. You can get your yardage, but good luck trying to finish your drives. We're going to at least make you work for it. So what happened in the last year or two, though, is that teams started seeing what the Bills were doing with these smaller, more athletic linebackers. And basically, the entire NFL now is going after smaller, more athletic linebackers that are good in coverage. So what's happening is when the too high safety looks started happening, first came around, teams would go to the intermediate parts of the field to exploit that because they couldn't go over the top. Now you have these basically bigger safeties at linebacker, and you don't have the intermediate spots open to you anymore either. So how do you pass against it? Well, you simply, in most cases, you can't. You have to basically check down, check down, check down, check down, check down. And a lot of these quarterbacks that have been drafted in the last 10 years, they're guys that aren't made for that. They're guys that are dual threat. They like to run. When they don't get when they don't have the wide open guy, they run it. Well, what's happening now is their passing options are just taken away. They don't know how to react. So teams now basically realize we have to run the ball to get teams out of these too high looks to then open up the passing game. But some of these teams, they just don't have the running mentality that they need. The Bills, it sounds crazy because all we've been hearing for the last 5 years is throw the ball 60%, throw the ball 65%. The strategy to winning football right now is run the ball, continue running the ball, be efficient running the ball, and then find your opportunities throughout a game to pass. And when you have those open opportunities, hit on them. Like Pat Mahomes only threw it over 5 yards 6 times out of 25.
That was the craziest. That was the passing chart I saw. That
he
was
had 13,
insane.
I think it was either 12 or 13 passes that were at the line of scrimmage or behind it. You look at Aaron Rodgers, he's not throwing it down the field. Joe Burrow is throwing like 5 yards down the field. This is a league-wide thing right now. And you want to know something crazy. So in 2020, only 4 teams averaged less than 200 yards per game passing. And then last year, that number jumped up to 10. This year, through 2 weeks, that number is at 17 teams. There are more teams in the league that are throwing 200 or less passing yards per game than teams that are throwing more than 200 or more passing yards per game. The Bills right now are throwing for 181.5 per game. We all wondered why was Josh Allen's passing line before the season at 3,800 and then 3,750 in some books? The reason that is, and now I think we have enough information to verify this, is because Vegas has inside people, not maybe for specific teams, but people that know executives and different people throughout the league. And those people were telling Vegas, this is what our team is going to do for this. This is what their team is going to do for this. And what we have discovered, the entire NFL has basically come to the same conclusion. We need to run the ball. And until we run the ball effectively, we can't throw it downfield.
Yeah, that's very well said, Mike. It's going to be the trend of the season. Like it
started last year. We're just seeing it more now because last year some teams were still trying to throw through it. Now teams have basically discovered we can't throw through it. And this is also one other point. So when Josh Allen last year, think about the games the Bills lost where turnovers were a big factor. The Jets Monday Night Football game, the Denver, I believe that was a Monday Night Football game. You had there was a few other games. You had a game against New England where you had a dumb turnover early. There was a lot of games where the Bills lost where turnovers played a factor. And Sean McDermott was very heavy on we need to be good in all 3 facets. And a lot of Bills fans kept saying, well, it doesn't matter that Josh Allen turns the ball over because he's scoring all these touchdowns. Well, what I think we learned late in last season was when the Bills went to a heavy run game the last 5-6 games of the regular season, they averaged 156 rush yards per game. But over that stretch, they only threw for 199.5 per game. But what happened? They won 6 of their last 7 games of the regular season. And they went on a 5-game winning streak to end the regular season. So you go back the last 5 games of the regular season, the 2 playoff games, and the 2 games this year. The Bills have won 8 of their last 9 games. Their passing attack is averaging less than 195 yards passing per game during that stretch. They're running ball for over 150 a game. What we have learned is if the Bills take care of the ball, they don't just give it away on like not giving points away to another team. They just play an efficient, smart game management style. They will win over 75% of their games. So Bills fans probably hate it because Josh Allen has been a freak for the last 4 years. The Bills have basically shown you the playbook to winning is not having Josh Allen go crazy. Play within yourself.
So you think it was more so that Joe Brady came in for Ken Dorsey and saw these vulnerabilities in these 2 high safety defenses that he can run the ball through them, something that Ken Dorsey probably wasn't seeing. And the whole conspiracy of, well, they're just trying to shove Stephon Diggs down here and minimize his role so that they can have an excuse to trade him. No, it was more so that Joe Brady saw avenues of advancing the ball through running through very pass-oriented defenses. Correct?
Joe Brady has said it firsthand. He doesn't care if you have to throw it. He doesn't care if you have to run it. He's going to take what the defense gives you. And he's going to do what's best for this Bills team. Since the Bills have decided to focus on running the ball, they haven't been losing football games. The one loss against Kansas City was a game where they had an opportunity in the final 2 minutes to win the game. I think the problem with trends and fans sometimes is we get. If you would have said 10 years ago, we should throw the ball for 300 yards a game, you'd be like, people would say, that's crazy. Like, that's too much throwing the ball. You got to have some game management. You have to have some clock, you got to use the clock to your advantage. But then you see all the success, and then fans think, okay, you got to throw it 65% of the time. You got to Josh Allen. But what's happening is there's always an adjustment, and the defenses have adjusted to the pass-heavy teams. Why do you think Deshaun Watson went from being one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL to now the dude can't play football? It's not that he's just suddenly stopped knowing how to play football. It's that when he was playing football and really effective, he was playing one style of play. Then he comes back years later after missing 2 seasons. Defenses are defending him completely different, and he doesn't have the skill set to play the check down, complete short passes, handed off type game. What we're actually seeing, which is a credit to Josh Allen, is that because of his dual threat ability and his improvisational skills, the Bills are still good enough to, even with them adapting this style, they're going to be explosive. Now, the goal of this is if you continue to have James Cook go off like he is, eventually teams aren't going to just be able to be nickel against you all the time. They're going to have to adjust to stop the run. That's when you then go over the top. That's when you take your shots in the intermediate side of the field. This is why Dalton Kincaid was an incredible draft pick for the Bills a couple years ago. Because ultimately, if teams right now, when Dalton Kincaid is on the field, are going nickel against the Bills because they're scared of him in the pass game. But he's a tight end. He's not a receiver. He might not be the best blocking tight end, but he's still a better blocker than what you're going to normally get out of a receiver out there. You get Dalton Kincaid on the field in a nickel situation. You have a 2 tight end and 12 personnel. You are going to have a blocking advantage every time you run the ball. So if you can get 5 yards, if you can get 6 yards, you're setting up second and manageable. You're setting up a numbers advantage for your offense from a percentage wise. And then eventually you're going to have defenses struggle to decide, well, they're getting 5 yards every damn time we're going nickel against this. We can't just let them gobble it up. And then if they make those changes, that's when you let Josh start going to the pass. And most of these teams are going to continue to play the Bills for stopping the pass and allowing them to run it. So the Bills just have to continue exploiting it. And it's going to take some time for fans to get used to. But as long as James Cook is gashing teams, you got to just keep going with it. And it's going to be strange. But like we have literally Josh Allen throwing the ball, 23 times in the first game and in 19 games. Like the Bills are winning. The Bills are putting up 31.5 points a game with Josh Allen throwing it barely over 20 times a game.
He's being an efficient game manager. And that's like not a knock on it. That's what they need from him. And if you're going to have somebody who can manage it the way Josh can, because not everybody can do it, and he's managing it really well, and Brady's obviously scheming it up really well, but he's making the right choices. He's understanding down and distance and game situation a lot, but then he can also make the amazing plays that only a Josh Allen can do when they need those, like he did in week 1, where he needed to do it a lot more than he did in week 2. I don't know what you do to defend this team.
Like, by not having him do everything himself, you're cutting down on the costly turnovers. Like, a lot of times people will say, well, turnovers don't matter, but they do matter. Like, they have cost the Bills games in the past. So it's about getting the best version of Josh Allen. And when you think about it, there was some talk earlier about how Khalil Shakir, reception perception, Matt Harmon was saying how Khalil Shakir is the perfect receiver to have for basically offense right now for how teams are playing defensively. He finds the open areas. He can get the yards after catch. He's a little physical. And basically Matt Harmon said, those are what you want right now, more than the boundary guys, because the boundary guys are getting limited based on how defenses are covering them. So if you have a guy in the middle, you can almost go with a lesser guy on the outside, focus on running the game, get bigger tight ends. Like, basically what the Bills are doing, they're doing a power spread offense. And they're basically saying, we are not going to be able to generate explosive plays the way we used to. So we're just going to make sure that we can keep just keeping it going 5-6 yards at a time, but yet we still have the guys that can make an explosive when needed. Because the few biggest keys to winning football consistently in the NFL is the ability to generate explosive plays, the ability to play defense, and then takeaways. Those are the three things. And with NFL defenses taking away explosive plays, you're going to have to find other ways, at least in the passing game, you're going to have to find other ways of generating offense, generating points. And that's what I think the Bills' counter to all of this was. Okay, if you're not going to give us the pass game, we're going to find a way to do it on the ground. And it's one of the things where I think they were ahead of this trend. And fans should actually be pretty encouraged about this for one other reason. I don't want to go on and on. I know I already am. But think about the Bills when they're playing the Chiefs in 2020 or 2021. Even when they had a great defense, didn't it feel at times like they had nothing they could do to stop them? It just felt like, God, what are we like? We're just screwed. Like, we could be the number one defense. We're going up against Pat Mahomes. We're going to allow 30 points. The best thing about defenses catching up to the offense is that when you are going up against any other elite offense, like the Chiefs or Cincinnati or so forth, there is now a chance the Bills can get the stops. There's no team the Bills are going to go up against where they don't have the possibility of stopping them. Now, that does mean the worst teams in the NFL are going to be closer to the middle teams, and the middle teams are going to be closer to the top teams. But I always felt that with the Bills, there was always a little bit of a gap between them and KC when it mattered the most. And now I go into this year thinking, if the Bills can get in the playoffs, I don't care if they're the 1, 2, 3, 4 seed, I think they have the ability to make a run in the playoffs going forward, because I don't think there really is a gap between the Bills, KC, Cincinnati, with how offense is basically being taken away at this point in time.
Do you think part of our confidence in being able to beat the Chiefs in the playoffs now stems from we're seeing through 2 games a very minimalized role for Travis Kelce in their offense, maybe a catch per game? He had 1 catch that was called back due to a penalty that was downfield, but otherwise he's been pretty silent. Is he just losing a step, or are these nickel defenses finally catching up to being able to stop Travis Kelce?
From my naked eye, and from watching this game for a long time and a lot of sports for a long time, bro just looks a lot slower right now. And that could change by the end of the year. He could be working himself into shape. He is older and not turning up right now. But there's just some plays, some of the movements that just don't look as fluid, don't look as quick. And it is harder to pass the ball. He's not going to find those same pockets. The tight ends around the league right now, besides Brock Bowers, who's been excellent for 2 games, it's a crapshoot for what you're going to get out of tight ends. I think that's a lot of what's going on with everything Mike was just explaining there with how they're getting defended too.
Yeah,
Kelsey doesn't look the same to me at this point, but we'll see, because he did this last year a little bit in the beginning too and kind of turned it up when he needed to.
He's at the age now where he has to conserve in the regular season.
Yeah.
So I think round 35, that's when you're going to see a drop off. I still expect playoff time him to make plays and make an impact. I just don't think you're going to see prime.
How old was Gronk in the Tampa Bay year? Like, he was like 37, wasn't he?
No, Gronk is
35.
Rob Gronkowski is still pretty young overall. He's 35.
Oh, he's 35
years old right now, and Travis Kelce is 34. So Gronk and Kelce are basically the same age. Gronk just decided to hang it up much younger. But my playoff confidence is actually less to do with anything Kansas City and more to do with the game is changing. And when you have lower scores and you have less explosives, you have teams that are much tighter in the pack. And I like how the Bills are coached. I like the way the Bills are adjusting and how they're normally ahead of the trends. So, when you play this way, like the Bills could make a run to the Super Bowl, or they could lose in the wild card round the way things are right now. So, I'm not saying like they're going to suddenly win a Super Bowl, but I just think that there's a lot to be encouraged about the Bills. I feel like Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott are always ahead of the rest of the pack when it comes to changing trends in the league. And a lot of people always talk about, oh, McDermott's not an offensive coach. Like what he's doing with the Bills offense, this is ahead of everybody else. So, and then defensively, the things that he's done with their defense, teams are copycatting what the Bills have been doing the last 3-4 years. Like the Bills defensive coaching it's stellar. If only they knew how to show up against the Chiefs in the playoffs, there'd be a whole different narrative around them. Like one last thing, like just to talk about the Miami game for a second. We've been talking for like 3-4 years about how it doesn't matter who the Bills have at defensive back or safety because McDermott's a corner whisperer. Well, you know what? That's also applying to linebacker right now. They literally went into this game with after Bernard went down with Balin Spector and Dorian Williams as their linebackers. And what did Miami do? Nothing. You have Jamarcus Ingram in there. What did Miami do? Nothing. Cam Lewis in there. Nothing. Damar Hamlin in there. Nothing. Like Taylor Rapp. Nothing. Like right now, like this is the ragtag Bills. Like you literally have backups in the entire secondary. And like Jamarcus Ingram, love the guy. Like covered him at UB, undrafted free agent. Cam Lewis, undrafted free agent. Damar Hamlin, 6th-round draft pick. Like it goes on and on and on. Christian Benford, 6th-round draft pick. Balin Spector, 7th-round draft pick. Dorian Williams, 3rd-round draft pick. People thought he should have been a 4th-round draft pick. Like at this point in time, the other thing too with like the people that I don't know where you stand, so I'm not saying this to target anybody on this. But a lot of people even talk about like, oh, like last year the Bills should fire McDermott and move on to like a better offensive coach. All these other offensive coaches are doing the same things the Bills are doing offensively right now. So like if the Bills didn't have McDermott and they had the same group of defensive players, I guarantee you they'd be allowing minimum 4 to 5 more points per game.
One thing about the Dolphins, I mean, they couldn't do anything. The one guy of note that I saw doing any kind of productivity was Achane. It seemed like the beginning of every drive, he'd be catching screen passes for chunks of 8, 10, 15 yards at a time. And that's also part of the Bills' defensive philosophy is keep everything in front of you and go up and make tackles and wait for them to make mistakes. So it proved to be pretty effective. Every time Achane would catch a ball for 15, however many yards, I thought, well, looks like they're going to be moving the ball. And they only end up with 10 points at the end of the day. So credit to McDermott and the whole overall defensive scheme here, and the play calling, by the way.
And I think training camp. I think that these guys in that back end, everybody that you just mentioned, they're making open field tackles. They're not missing a lot. Like I don't know what the stat is actually. Williams made a couple nice tackles week 1. I didn't notice who was doing it again, but that's part of it too. Of the keeping it in front of you is making the tackles in the open field. That's not what you expect from replacement level players in the NFL. I think that they teach. I think the Bills teach football really in a really smart way, especially defensively, and it shows up in dividends. But also, you brought him up, Christian Benford. The fancy stats agree with it right now too. He might just be one of the best corners in the league, and there were signs pointing towards it when he's been healthy the last couple of years, and the signs are pointing towards it again. I want to see the whole couple bigger sample size as we get into the season here, but against 2 tough wide receiver matchups, after we saw what Marvin Harrison did against, Tre'Davious White on Sunday, and what he was able to do against Tyreek Hill. It's pretty impressive, man. And Douglas is looking pretty good himself over there. So they might have a couple studs at corner, and then we already talked about the D-line and how good they can be. So it's kind of like the power dynamic of the defense switched over from the linebackers and the safeties through the middle to your corners and your D-line.
It's definitely a changing of the guard, and I think that's something that the national media just didn't realize heading into the season. Now, I thought the defense was vulnerable. I said in our preseason show they would be somewhere between 8 to 12 potentially, and that they could be even worse depending on how things play out. But it definitely is a change in the guard. Right now, this is Greg Rousseau's defense. This is Ed Oliver's defense. Terrell Bernard, when healthy, his defense. Christian Benford. It's all these younger guys that are now being asked to take over the reins, and that's a good thing because we talk about guys like Jordan Poyer. He was 33 years old. He's 33 years old, and maybe he could still play well, but he looked pretty smoked when James Cook was running by him. Micah Hyde, older, dealing with injuries. Like when people were calling for Micah Hyde to come back, I just kept thinking, like, that's not what you want to do with this team. This is a young team. They need to figure it out on their own. We don't need to be asking older veterans that probably lost a step to go out there. We need this new group to figure things out, and they're going to have some ups and downs. But we saw against Miami, if you can slow down that team with all of the speed they have out there, you have the ability to do that against anybody. And the thing that gives me encouragement is even from an offensive standpoint about why I think the Bills know what to do on offense. They're so good at shutting down all of these defenses. They have to come up with the answers on how to do it against themselves in practice.
Yeah.
So it's the Bills' best thing is that they're solid on both sides of the ball. They give themselves good competition, and it's honestly kind of wild going forward, knowing that just some of the random pieces that are on the squad and how high of a level they continue to perform.
Well, Bunt, let's and Jake, let's transfer over to a preview of the Bills' upcoming game, because you mentioned explosive plays. You mentioned, being able to beat high-powered teams. You wouldn't know it by their play in the first 2 weeks, but Jacksonville Jaguars, number one explosive play rate at 14.3% through 2 weeks. And what's been said is you're 10 times more likely to score on a drive with an explosive play. The Bills, if you're curious, are at 9%. They're more middle of the league. So despite what Trevor Lawrence, his shortcomings of his expectations, seems like Jacksonville is making the most of what they have at certain points in their drives.
Yeah, there are a lot of boom or bust, in my opinion. Trevor Lawrence can make the spectacular, but he can also fail with some of the basics. His receivers in the past have let him down. I don't know. This Jacksonville team, I don't want to talk any crap about them because 2 straight times.
It sounds like you do.
Oh, yeah.
No, I know. It's just like it's a team that can do absolutely nothing, and then they play the Buffalo Bills, and they look like they're like the greatest thing I've ever seen, and it just annoys me because
first of all, hold on, I have to stop you there.
Jacksonville Bills games that just makes you scratch your head. From the very first game, was the playoff game that the Bills lost for the first time in Rich Stadium. Jim Kelly got knocked out with a concussion.
Push out game back in the day.
Yep.
Oh yeah,
the Jags are just. Their fans are annoying. Jacksonville just annoys me. The entire team, everything. And then now you got Gabe Davis and Mitch Morse down there.
I will say no one played well in the Urban Meyer game. That was 2 teams just seeing who sucked less. And the Bills.
I could live with that if that was a drought era game, but a Josh Allen quarterback era team game.
It felt like the Twilight Zone, to be honest.
And we thought we were going to get our London redemption. It was London last year, right? We thought we were going to get our London versus the Jags redemption last year, and we never led throughout any point of that game.
I do think there have been good signs from the Jags. It looked messy against the Browns. I had higher hopes for them. Picked them to win Sunday. The Browns defense is also just a great unit who got torched in week 1, but seemed to figure out a lot of answers playing against the Jags last week, and it was a little messy game. I'm with Mike there. It seems like you're both Mike. I'm with Bunt there. Seems like it's a big boomer bust, and that's the type of receivers they have too. And also my number, I think I tweeted it the other day. It just looks like Trevor Lawrence is just trying to throw the ball as hard and as far as he can every time he throws. Like he does it. He looks like he's trying to make a lot happen, and that's where the explosives are coming from. But they have not been efficient. They don't look like they can be a really physical team. I thought that I was interested in them after the Miami game because it looked like they were pretty physical with them for 3 quarters and then just completely fell apart because they're the Jags and Jags it up. But that game against the Browns, when it was another good offensive line, another good defensive line, the Browns really controlled the pace, controlled the play. And if they had a competent quarterback playing football, they would have won that game by 2 touchdowns. So I'm not worried about the Jags, except for everything you guys were saying there with the history of the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Buffalo Bills. Just terrified by that. And desperate teams being teams going into week 3, the 0-2 teams all scare me when they're making picks and pools. You know, if you're looking at gambling, anything else, those are the teams that you don't know, because there's a level in all sports. There's a level that you can't ever account for, and it's desperation from a team. Now, some of these teams are just going to roll over already and die and be 0-3, and they're going to be worthless for the rest of the year. Probably the Carolina Panthers. But one of these 0-2 teams is going to have a statement win where they feel like their season comes back to life here. That's what I'm scared about with the Jags. Like if they go 0-3 in their division, the way it's looked, like the Texans are going to blow them out of the water, and they're going to have to do a lot of work to get into this wild card picture, which is going to be muddied. So the motivation level for the Jags should be really high on Monday.
I don't really buy too much in motivation levels at the pro level. Like, not to put down your point.
No, it's okay.
They're 0-2, of course. They need to win. Like just like the Bills are 2-0, and they want to win going into Baltimore. Yeah. So the Bills lose against Jacksonville. Then you're sitting at 2-1 with Baltimore, and you're scared of going 2-2. Like, yeah, they're professional teams. They need to play hard. I don't know. Like, if it wasn't for like past history with the Jaguars, I really wouldn't be scared of this team too much. I think that a guy like Trevor Lawrence is one of the most overrated quarterbacks in the league, while at the same time, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that because he hasn't really I don't know if most people even think he's that great.
I wrote in my doc here, my own personal doc, is Trevor Lawrence good? That's exactly what I wrote. Average, I don't know.
Average, like he gets paid like he's elite, but performance-wise, he's one of those guys that he can do incredible things. He was hyped up to be the next Andrew Luck type prospect that can't miss, generational talent. And to be honest, he hasn't been close to that. Like he's been very, very average. If you put him on Miami, we'd be saying that like he's a middle of the pack quarterback. I don't think he's a top 10 quarterback. I think he's probably closer to being like 13, 14, 15 than he is anything good. Maybe there's advanced stats that are going to tell me I'm crazy. But you go through the last 2 years. Last year, 21 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. The year before that, 25-8, that was a good year. But QBR 56, 56, 56, and then as a rookie, 12 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, QBR 39. I just don't think he's that great of a player. The great ones elevate the talent around him. I don't see Trevor Lawrence really elevating people to elite levels. He has good players around him. I just think if he was as special as he was, the Jacksonville Jaguars wouldn't be struggling to get 9 wins every season. And Houston's already leapfrogged them. Going into the season, people thought that Indianapolis had the chance of leapfrogging them. What we're really seeing early on in this season, more than anything else, is maybe the AFC is just overrated. You go through all of the entire AFC right now. Is Miami that great? No. And now they're going to have Skylar Thompson, so they're going to struggle. The Jets, are they great? That looked like New York machine all over it.
I can't wait for Thursday.
Maybe they'll get better. I think the Jets will be a better team at the end of the season than what we're talking about now. New England, they're better than what we thought, but are they good? Probably not. The AFC South, Indy, no. Tennessee, no. Jacksonville,
Tennessee's an adventure as long as they have Will Levis. I mean, at least it'll be
entertaining. Yeah,
so that's half the conference, right? And then you go to the AFC North. Cincinnati's 0-2, Baltimore's 0-2. The Ravens are playing the Cowboys this week. After the Cowboys, they play the Bills. The Ravens could be 0-4 theoretically. You go to the West. Who would have thought that the Chargers might be one of the top teams in the AFC through 2 weeks? So, looking at this conference,
I did have them.
It's wide open. Like the Bills.
We did this. I told you.
You did. I'll give you credit. I'll give you credit.
Hey, I don't think 13-4 is happening, but hey.
But it's just funny. It like I said after the season ended last year that I thought the Bills would go 12-5. I had a show. I said 12-5. Then like all the national media talk about the Bills and losing all these players, it starts to wear on you. And I started believing it. And then I started doubting the Bills, and I lowered it to 11-6. Then I was like, well, maybe 10 wins, but I stuck with 11-6 anyway. And then here we are 2 weeks into the regular season, and I feel like the Bills are maybe the second or third best team in the NFL. Like, even the teams that we thought were great. San Fran, did they look that great at Minnesota? Yeah. No. Detroit loses at home against Tampa Bay. Like, all these teams, if the Bills would have lost to any of those teams that Detroit and San Fran and all these other teams have lost to, they'd be getting killed right now for it. So some things never change. And the Bills right now, they're still one of the elite teams in the NFL.
Well, I think we're at the point where let's put our money where our mouth is for a Monday Night Football prediction here presented by Picasso's Pizza. Partham, I'm putting you on the hot seat for your first show of the year. What do you think's going to happen on Monday night?
Barring any kind of crazy, Horcrux level of just things that just go wrong for reasons we can't explain until we get to the All-22, I'm expecting us to handle those explosive boomer bust plays, especially with the defense that we have going on, how they were able to handle Marvin Harrison Jr., seeing as how he broke out week 2, how they were once again able to handle Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So I'll expect a lower scoring game for the Jags. The Bills will put up the points that they need to, but not more than that. I'll say 27-17.
I will I'm not going to go against the Bills back-to-back weeks, which means I'll probably jinx the Bills and they'll find a way to lose this one in awful fashion. But I'm going to go Bills 27-24. I believe that the Jags will get some points. They will find a way to take advantage of the Bills' defense at moments. Trevor Lawrence, while I just said all this stuff about him being mid and average, somehow against the Bills, he always looks really damn good. So whatever they're doing, I trust they're going to have some answers. But I think the Bills are going to find a way to get this win. And can you imagine 3-0 Buffalo going into Baltimore and trying to show the rest of the NFL where they sit in this league? I mean, if the Bills go into Baltimore and Houston and they find a way to get both of those W's or even split them, I think we're gonna see a big narrative change on the Bills going into the rest of the season. I think you're going to start hearing a lot of people talk Super Bowl once again with this squad. So a lot on the line in the next few weeks as far as early season narratives.
Definitely. The Bills could be September champs. The case could happen right here. We're eyeing up to it.
I want to be the February
primetime games here. We just had one Thursday. We're going into Monday night. Bills-Ravens is going to be Sunday night football. I mean, here, let's play a little clip to capture the feeling of all these primetime big games.
What would you rather be than right here, right now?
Love it.
I agree, man. We got to enjoy these. Well, I was wishing for a Monday night, a Sunday night, an anything night game for my entirety of my childhood during the drought years. So I welcome all this mayhem and chaos in the schedule. This early season is nuts, though. It is wild to see. We had a comment from Carl earlier I wanted to bring up when we were talking about this game. Trevor Lawrence has been sacked 7 times the past 2 games. Do you have a prediction for the number of sacks Monday night with Miller, Groot, and Oliver balling the way they have been? That's a name. We haven't even mentioned the name Von Miller on this podcast tonight. And
I did.
Did you? Okay, I'm sorry. You're right.
Wow.
You're right. A lot of words said. I'm sorry. Von has been on, I can't remember what the list was, but I think it was pass rush rate that I saw. I believe he's 5th in the league or 6th in the league at this point. The advanced stats are looking very kindly on Von Miller. He has a sack in both games to start the year, which if you would have told me that in April, May, whatever, I would have gladly taken it. We said before the season, Mike, if he can get to, even 7 sacks, 6 sacks, we would be happy with it. On pace for a hell of a lot more than that. I do think they'll get pressure on Lawrence. I'm going to be a broken record when predicting the Bills games all this year because it's what I was harping on all summer. But I think the D-line is elite and they can take over a game. That's the one thing you can't defend in the NFL. They could take over a game at any time. I don't think that the Jags are going to be able to keep up with that defensive line from what I saw from them the last couple of weeks against the Dolphins or the Browns. Lawrence will be under pressure. I think you guys are right at there with the 27. I'm going to go with a 27-13 win over the Jacksonville Jaguars Monday night. That's where
It's
I'm
crazy.
at.
I just can't believe we're talking with this much confidence 3 weeks into the regular season after the entire offseason.
Next week might be the week that I switch and go with another team, because that
Well, the
Ravens
thing
team
is,
is going to be tricky no matter what happens.
What if
We're
the
not in
Ravens lose to the Cowboys? What if they're 0-3? You're going to pick the 0-3 Ravens against the 3-0 Bills?
Depends how bad it is.
Well, here's the thing. We haven't gotten to our midseason swoon yet, guys. So, we got to pace ourselves here. We can't – the depressing losses to, like, a 500 record can't come until, like, late October or November.
The Bills-Titans game, as I already know, it's going to be the most infuriating game of 2024. We're going to see it's going to be all the chaotic energy from Will Levis and Josh Allen, and that's the one I'm bookmarking. If we're going to talk
what I
about
like
this week
the most, though? I don't know if there's going to be as many depressing losses for this Bills team. Like, they might lose to bad teams every once in a while, but a lot of the losses in recent years felt like the Bills gave away the game, or the Bills were the better team and they found a way to lose. With the way things are going offensively this year, I just don't think they're going to have a lot of stupid turnovers. Like, this is going to be the year that Josh Allen throws for like 24 touchdowns and only has 6-7 interceptions. Because
what's the streak at where the Bills have not lost a game by more than 6 points? Is that going back to like 2021 or something like that?
believe
it's like 41 games or something like that. But I did want to say one last thing before we close up the show. Because my theme for the show today, when I was previewing it, was let James cook. And one thing I didn't add earlier when we were talking about the run game is it's not just ideal to run the ball, but it makes sense to run the ball when you have one of the most dynamic running backs in the NFL. And I know some people can use advanced stats to say that James Cook isn't that incredible. The guy was top 5 in total yards from scrimmage last year. Now they're starting to use him in more situations. This year, James Cook is going to enter the category of elite running backs in the NFL, in my opinion. Already had three touchdowns last week, dual threat. You're going to see a guy that should easily run for over 1,000 yards and should have between 450 to 500 receiving yards. It is only a matter of time before we start looking at James Cook as probably one of the top offensive players on this team, maybe one of the top players overall on this team. And who knows how long we could be talking about him being in the same level running back for the Bills as what Shady McCoy was a little while ago.
And let's not underestimate Ray Davis. He was getting a couple of good chunk plays in the first half for like 8 or 10 yards. So they've got a good 1-2 punch developing here in the running game.
The 1-2-3, even Ty Johnson.
Yeah, even getting some answers. Nice catch there. I'm already there, but I think James Cook is their best offensive player out of Josh Allen. I think they knew that coming into the year. Even more than Kincaid. We were talking about Kincaid getting all the targets and everything else. And I know that we were high on Cook coming into the year, but I don't think any of us were high enough thinking that he's just going to – because we didn't know what as we talk about the trends and everything going into the league. But that's how the Bills were uniquely suited. That offensive line was going to be able to open up some holes that they're – especially with those tackles that they have who have been so good to start the year. And B, James Cook is just more dynamic, I think, than anybody's given him credit for. I think he's going to be regarded as one of the top backs in the league by the end of this year. Because especially if McCaffrey's hurt the whole year or on and off hurt, there's going to be conversations around guys. And Henry, who knows with him by the end of the year.
Didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry about that.
No, you're good.
You want to know why our expectations were too low? Not you and Mike, but like Bills fans in general.
Yeah, collectively.
It's because this goes back to we've been told that the only way you're a good offense in the league is by passing it. And everybody saw the end of last year with Joe Brady with them running it, and they didn't want to believe that was the Bills' offense going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And then they saw the randomness at wide receiver, and I think there was a lot of the fan base that was dreading, God, they're going to be a running team. And there was this fear that what happened at the end of last year wasn't repeatable, that they weren't going to be able to get it done running the ball. And the Bills inside the locker room have been telling a completely different story the entire time. They've talked about the everyone eats. They've been talking about creating a mentality offensively where they are they're making things happen with moving guys at the line of scrimmage, getting it done with their big boys. And there was just this doubt that that's how you get it done. We're seeing right now, they got the big boys up front. They're creating holes. And when you, if anything, this just makes it easier. If you can consistently block like that, how are you going to stop them?
Good luck.
So I personally love it. And so be it. The Bills probably won't have a 1,000-yard receiver this year. Don't even care. This is the James Cook offense with Josh Allen taking on the game manager role at quarterback. And it might sound weird. It might sound odd, but it might be more effective for the Bills to make a run in the playoffs, because you know what gets it done in January and February. It's about winning bad weather games, letting your defense take care of business. And if you're grinding out longer drives, you're keeping your defense off the field, letting them stay fresh, they're more likely to make the plays that you need. So it sounds stupid, but go back to the Patriots all those years back. How did the Patriots win Super Bowls? They weren't winning them with Randy Moss and Wes Welker. They were winning them when they were running the ball, when they were good with clock management, and they were solid in all three facets of the game. And I think the Bills are basically telling the world right now, we know Josh is a freak. When we need him to be a freak, we'll let him be a freak. But we want to play within a winning system. And there's going to be a lot of people that hate it, that disagree with it. But we see time after time after time after time in football. Sometimes the people that win the ugly ways are better at winning than the people that win the splashy way. The people that play ugly football win more consistently than the people that play splashy football. And if nerds and football geeks hate to say it, I'm one of them. I like the football numbers, but it's proven over time.
Well said.
Well said.
Yeah, I think that's what we're going to leave it on here. We paid the bills. Thank you, our presenting sponsor, Picasso's. As always, get your pizza nationwide at picassospizza.net, shipped to your house or anywhere at your Western New York locations. Mike and Mike, that was a great reunion. Hope we'll be back next week, Tuesday, right after a game day on a Monday night against the Jags to talk everything Jags and then give a preview to Sunday night and the Ravens. But we got a long way to go till there. We got to wait. It's going to feel like forever, honestly. The getting to the weekend this week is going to feel like forever after a Thursday night game. But thank you, gents, for joining. Thank you, everybody who tuned in. Have a great night, folks, and go Bills.